The broadcast had been meant as a display of dominance. The Zelthari Collective, a spacefaring empire that had carved out a sizable chunk of the Orion arm, wanted to send a message to the upstart humans who had dared to establish colonies beyond their homeworld. On the morning of March 15, 2247, every communication device on Earth, Luna, Mars, and the scattered outposts beyond received the same transmission. It was not a declaration of war. It was an execution. The feed showed New Seattle, the jewel of human expansion on Kepler 442b. The domed city housed 7 million souls, men and women and children who had traveled light years to build a new life among the stars. The camera angle was high, mounted on one of the Zelthari warships that hung in low orbit like birds of prey. For 3 hours, humanity watched in horror as lance after lance of coherent energy carved through the protective dome. Atmosphere vented into the thin alien air, buildings collapsed, people ran, screaming silently in the vacuum until they could run no more. The Zelthari commander appeared on screen afterward, his 4 eyes gleaming with satisfaction. His translation came through flat and emotionless. "This is the fate of those who expand without permission. Your kind is confined to your system. Venture beyond again, and we will sterilize your homeworld." Then the transmission ended. In the halls of the United Earth Government in Geneva, there was silence. President Helen Clark sat at the head of the Emergency Council table, her face pale, her hands trembling. Around her, the military chiefs and civilian advisors looked equally shaken. General Raymond Cole, the grizzled commander of the Earth Defense Fleet, was the first to speak. "We need to respond," he said quietly. "If we don't, they'll see us as weak. They'll do it again." "With what?" Admiral Patricia Knox snapped. "We have 40 ships capable of interstellar travel, and most of those are science vessels or cargo haulers. The Zelthari fleet numbers in the thousands. They've been doing this for centuries. We've been in space for 50 years. Helen raised a hand, silencing the argument before it could escalate. Her voice was steady, though her eyes betrayed the rage beneath. "How many people saw that broadcast?" "Everyone," said Dr. Vincent Harper, the Minister of Communications. "Every device on every human world. They made sure of it. They wanted us to see." "Then everyone knows what they did," Helen said. 7 million people, murdered, broadcast live so we would be afraid." She looked around the table, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. "Are we afraid?" No one answered immediately. Then General Cole leaned forward. "No, Madam President, we're furious." Helen nodded slowly. "Good, because I'm about to authorize something that will either save humanity or doom us all. General, I want you to activate Project Aegis." The room went still. Project Aegis was a whisper, a rumor, something that most of the people in that room had assumed was either fiction or long abandoned. It had been born in the early days of interstellar exploration, when humanity realized that the galaxy was not empty, and not all of its inhabitants were friendly. The project's goal was simple in concept and nightmarish in execution. If humanity could not match alien technology ship for ship, then it would develop weapons so terrible that no sane species would dare provoke them. Admiral Knox paled. "Madam President, the ethical concerns alone are irrelevant," Helen interrupted. "They killed 7 million of our people. They did it to terrify us. I will not let them succeed." 3 weeks later, the first human warship entered Zelthari space. It was not an impressive vessel by the standards of the galaxy. The ship, designated Harbinger, was a converted mining hauler, its cargo bays refitted with experimental weapons systems that had never been tested in combat. Its crew numbered only 12, all volunteers who understood they might not be coming home. The ship's captain was Commander Aaron Mitchell, a former pilot who had lost his wife and daughter in the New Seattle massacre. Aaron stood on the bridge, watching the main screen as Harbinger dropped out of faster-than-light travel on the edge of the Zelthara system. The star ahead burned orange-red, and orbiting it were 3 planets, 2 of which were heavily populated. Intelligence estimated 20 billion Zelthari lived in this system alone. "Scan for defense platforms," Aaron ordered. Lieutenant Nina Vasquez, the ship's tactical officer, worked her console with quick, precise movements. "I'm reading over 200 stations, sir. Missile batteries, energy cannons, railgun arrays, they're heavily fortified." Can we slip past them? Negative, they've already detected us. We're being hailed. Aaron nodded. Put it through. The face that appeared on screen was unmistakably Zelthari. 4 eyes, scaled skin the color of bronze, a lipless mouth that opened to reveal rows of sharp teeth. The alien's voice came through the translator as a growl. Human vessel, you have entered restricted space. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. Aaron stepped forward, his expression calm. This is Commander Aaron Mitchell of the Earth Vessel Harbinger. I'm here to deliver a message. The Zelthari blinked, all 4 eyes closing and opening in sequence. Your message is irrelevant. You have 10 seconds to alter course. You killed 7 million humans, Aaron said. You broadcast it so we would be afraid. You thought we would retreat, that we would hide in our little corner of space and never challenge you again. He paused, his voice dropping to something cold and hard. You were wrong, the Zelthari snarled. You are one ship, we have thousands, your bravado is pathetic. We only needed one, Aaron replied. Then he nodded to Nina. Fire. The weapon that Project Aegis had developed was not a laser, not a railgun, not anything that the galaxy's established powers would recognize. It was based on principles of quantum entanglement and zero-point energy, theories that human scientists had only recently begun to understand. When activated, it did not simply destroy matter. It unraveled it at the subatomic level, causing a cascading chain reaction that spread outward at the speed of light. The pulse that left Harbinger's bow was invisible to the naked eye. It crossed the distance to the nearest defense platform in less than a second. The platform did not explode. It simply ceased to exist. Then the reaction spread. The platforms around it began to disintegrate, their structures collapsing into dust and gas. The cascade accelerated, consuming satellites, space stations, ships. On the Zelthari homeworld, alarms began to scream. In orbit, the fleet scrambled to respond, but there was nothing to shoot at. The wave of destruction was already among them. Within minutes, the entire orbital infrastructure was gone. The reaction reached the upper atmosphere and continued downward. Aaron watched the screen as the planet below began to glow. Cities vanished. Oceans evaporated. The crust itself started to break apart, unable to withstand the forces tearing through it. He felt nothing. No satisfaction, no remorse. Only a cold certainty that this was necessary. The reaction is self-sustaining, Nina reported, her voice shaking. It's spreading to the other planets. How long until the entire system is sterilized? Aaron asked. 72 hours. Aaron turned away from the screen. Set course for the next system. We have 4 more targets. The Zelthari collective had 53 inhabited systems. In the span of 2 months, humanity reduced that number to 0. Each time the pattern was the same. A single human ship would arrive, deliver a message, and fire. The reaction would spread, consuming everything in its path. Planets, moons, asteroid bases, all of it reduced to subatomic particles. The galaxy watched in horror. The Zelthari sent envoys to the other great powers, begging for intervention. None came. The rules of interstellar politics were clear. If you provoked a war, you faced the consequences alone. Besides, no one wanted to risk drawing humanity's attention. On Earth, the reaction was mixed. In the streets of New York and Beijing and Lagos, there were celebrations. The aliens who had murdered 7 million humans were being erased. Justice was being served. But in the halls of government and academia, there was growing unease. Dr. Lisa Grant, a leading xenobiologist, gave an impassioned speech to the United Earth Assembly. We are not just destroying a military, she argued. We are committing genocide. The Zelthari had families, cultures, histories spanning thousands of years. Yes, their leaders committed an atrocity, but does that justify annihilating their entire species? President Helen Clark listened to the speech from her office. When it was over, she called Dr. Grant directly. Doctor, I respect your perspective, Helen said, but I want you to consider something. If we stop now, if we show mercy, what message does that send? That humanity can be slaughtered as long as you don't kill all of us. That 7 million lives are acceptable losses. Of course not, Lisa replied. But there has to be a middle ground, a way to punish the guilty without. There isn't, Helen interrupted. The Zelthari made their choice when they broadcast that massacre. They wanted to terrify us. They wanted every human to see what happens when we defy them. Now they're learning what happens when they defy us. And when it's over, Lisa asked, when the Zelthari are gone, will we be able to look at ourselves in the mirror? Helen was silent for a long moment. Then she said, I don't know, but I'd rather live with guilt than die with regret. By the end of the third month, the Zelthari collective no longer existed. 53 systems, once teeming with billions of lives, were now fields of debris. The final transmission from the Zelthari came from a deep space colony ship that had been en route to a distant frontier when the campaign began. Its captain, a female named Zara, sent a message to Earth. We surrender, she said. Please. There are children on this ship, families. We had nothing to do with what happened at New Seattle. We just want to live. The message was relayed to President Clark. She convened an emergency session of the Security Council. For 6 hours they debated. General Cole argued for mercy. Admiral Knox argued for pragmatism. In the end, Helen made the decision herself. Send them coordinates for a distant, uninhabited system, she ordered. If they settle there and never contact us again, they can live. But if they ever threaten humanity, if they ever even approach our space, we will finish what we started. The colony ship accepted the terms. It vanished into the depths of space, carrying the last remnants of a species that had once ruled a significant portion of the galaxy. In the aftermath, the galaxy changed. The other spacefaring civilizations who had watched humanity's campaign with a mixture of awe and terror approached Earth with new treaties, trade agreements, non-aggression pacts, offers of alliance. Humanity, it seemed, had earned a place at the table not through diplomacy or cultural exchange, but through sheer, terrifying power. Aaron Mitchell returned to Earth a hero, though he never felt like one. He resigned his commission and retired to a small cabin in the mountains of Colorado. He spent his days hiking, reading, trying to forget the images of worlds burning. He mostly failed. One evening, as he sat on his porch watching the sunset, a car pulled up to his cabin. A woman stepped out, middle-aged, with graying hair and tired eyes. Aaron recognized her immediately. It was Helen Clark, though she no longer held the title of president. She had stepped down 6 months after the campaign ended, citing health reasons. Everyone knew it was the weight of what she had ordered. Commander Mitchell, she greeted him. Just Aaron now, he replied. And you're just Helen, I suppose. She nodded and took a seat on the porch beside him. For a while they sat in silence, watching the sky turn from orange to purple to black. Finally, Helen spoke. Do you regret it? She asked. Aaron considered the question. Every day, he admitted, but I'd do it again. They killed 7 million people, Helen. My wife and daughter were in New Seattle. If I hadn't acted, if you hadn't given the order, their deaths would have been meaningless. Were they meaningful? Helen asked. Did erasing an entire species bring them back? No, Aaron said. But it made sure no one else will do what the Zelthari did. The galaxy knows now. You don't kill humans and walk away. Helen sighed. I hope you're right, because if you're not, we just painted a target on our entire species. They sat in silence again, 2 people carrying the weight of billions of lives. Above them, the stars shone cold and distant, indifferent to the struggles of those who lived beneath them. Years passed. Humanity continued to expand, though more cautiously now. The colonies that had been established before New Seattle were reinforced with defensive platforms and garrison fleets. New settlements were chosen with strategic value in mind, placed in systems that could be defended or abandoned if necessary. The lesson of the Zelthari was clear. Strength was not just about having powerful weapons. It was about the willingness to use them. The weapon that had destroyed the Zelthari, officially designated the Quantum Disintegration Array, was never used again. It remained classified, its specifications known only to a handful of scientists and military officials. But its existence was public knowledge. Every species in the galaxy knew that humanity possessed the means to erase entire worlds, and that they had proven their willingness to do so. In 2255, 8 years after the New Seattle massacre, humanity was invited to join the Galactic Council, a loose coalition of advanced civilizations that governed interstellar law and mediated disputes. The offer was unprecedented. Most species had to petition for decades, proving their technological and cultural merit. Humanity had been invited after less than a century in space. The ceremony took place on a massive space station orbiting a neutron star. Delegates from 100 worlds gathered to witness the occasion. The human representative was Ambassador Laura Bennett, a career diplomat who had spent years building relationships with alien cultures. As Laura stood before the assembled council, accepting humanity's seat, she felt the weight of countless eyes upon her. Some looked at her with respect, others with fear, a few with undisguised hatred. She understood. Humanity had become a power in the galaxy not through wisdom or benevolence, but through violence. When the ceremony concluded, Laura was approached by an alien delegate, a tall, slender being with iridescent skin and too many joints in its limbs. It introduced itself as Envoy Kale of the Sarath Ascendancy. "Congratulations on your admission," Kale said, its voice like wind through reeds. "Though I confess, many of us are uncertain whether to celebrate or mourn." Laura met its gaze evenly. "We didn't ask for what happened. The Zelthari made their choice." "And you made yours," Kale replied. "Total annihilation. Do you understand what that means for the rest of us? We now share the galaxy with a species that has demonstrated it will erase entire civilizations when provoked." "Then don't provoke us," Laura said simply. Kale stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "A fair answer. But tell me, Ambassador, do you ever wonder what you have become?" Laura considered the question. It was one she had asked herself many times in the quiet of her quarters. "Every day," she admitted, but the alternative was to let 7 million deaths go unanswered, to show weakness when strength was demanded. We couldn't afford that. "And now," Kale asked, "now that you have that seat, that power, what will humanity do with it?" "The same thing we've always done," Laura said. "We'll survive, and we'll make sure that anyone who threatens us regrets it." Kale inclined its head. "Then I hope, for all our sakes, that your people learn restraint before the galaxy learns to fear you more than it respects you." The envoy walked away, leaving Laura alone with her thoughts. Around her, the station hummed with activity, delegates from across the galaxy going about their business. She wondered how many of them had seen the broadcasts from New Seattle. How many had watched the Zelthari worlds burn? How many would sleep easier knowing humanity was bound by the same laws as everyone else? Or how many would sleep less easily knowing those laws were now enforced by a species willing to commit genocide? Back on Earth, in the archives of the United Earth Government, a report was filed and sealed. It detailed the full scope of Project Aegis, including weapons that had never been deployed. The quantum disintegration array was only the first. There were others, each more terrible than the last. Biological agents tailored to specific genetic markers, nanomachines that could disassemble matter at the molecular level, devices that could destabilize stars. The report concluded with a single recommendation. Humanity must never be pushed into a corner again, because if it was, the galaxy would burn. Decades later, historians would look back on the New Seattle massacre as a turning point, not just for humanity, but for the galaxy as a whole. It was the moment when the old powers realized that they were no longer alone at the top of the hierarchy, that a new player had entered the game, one that played by different rules. Some called humanity monsters, others called them saviors, a few called them necessary, but everyone, without exception, called them dangerous. And in the cold equations of galactic politics, dangerous was often the same as respected. Aaron Mitchell died in 2273 at the age of 78. His funeral was attended by thousands, though he had requested a small, private ceremony. Among the mourners was Helen Clark, now in her 90s and confined to a wheelchair. She placed a single white rose on his casket and whispered words that only she could hear. "We did what we had to do. I hope you found peace." As the casket was lowered into the ground, the sky above was filled with stars. Somewhere out there, in the vast darkness between them, the remnants of the Zelthari colony ship drifted in silence. They had kept their promise, never approaching human space, never threatening the species that had destroyed their civilization. They lived in isolation, a cautionary tale passed down through generations. And in the halls of the Galactic Council, humanity's seat remained occupied, a constant reminder to every species present. We are here, we are powerful, and we will not be victims again. The galaxy had changed, the rules had changed, and humanity, for better or worse, had ensured that it would never be dismissed as insignificant again. The story of the Zelthari and the 7 million became legend. It was taught in schools, debated in universities, commemorated in monuments. Some saw it as humanity's finest hour, the moment when they proved they could not be pushed around. Others saw it as humanity's darkest hour, the moment when they embraced the same brutality they claimed to oppose. But everyone agreed on one thing. The massacre at New Seattle had ended with the destruction of the Zelthari, and in doing so, humanity had sent a message that echoed across the stars. Touch us and there will be no mercy, no negotiation, no second chances, only ashes.